Ladies and gentlemen, Capital G here, and I'm back with another EDH deck tech. It's been a while, but I finally got a chance to brew something I think would be interesting for you guys, based off of the recent Commander 2017 decks. In this case, Arabho, Roar of the Wild. Cat deck. A cat deck that loves its equipment. It's an interesting variant on Voltron that I'd like to share with you. Let's have a look. Alright, so we have Arabho, Roar of the World. It's a 5/5 legendary cat avatar. He is part of the Commander 2017 series and has the keyword Eminence. At the beginning of combat on your turn, it doesn't matter if he's in play or if he's in your command zone. Either way, you get to give one of your cats +3/+3 until end of turn. You can also pay some mana and double the power of one of your cats, giving him trample in the process. Very, very powerful ability. You can only use that second ability when he's in play, but he's a 5/5 when he's in play, so why wouldn't you want to have him out there at some point? But because of this first ability, being able to make a cat huge right away, I decided to throw in a couple of low curve cats, like Trained Caracal, a 1/1 lifelink for 1 white mana, and his slightly superior cousin, the Sacred Cat from Amonkhet. Also a 1/1 lifelink, but it has Embalm, so I can bring him back later in the game for 1 white mana. A 4/4 lifelink on turn 1 is almost as good as Sierra Attendant, so this is a good budget way of having that sort of effect. I also kept in Leonin Arbiter from the Precon. It's a good little anti-search thing. My deck does do a lot of searching, so I do have to be careful when I drop him out. But if I get him out early, it could slow down other players' mana bases. Leonin Shakiri, you may have activate Equip at any time you could cast an instant. So there's going to be a lot of artifacts in this deck, as you're going to see. Adored Pouncer, 1/1 double strike, and that Eternalize means he comes back bigger later in the game if he's ever killed off. Very, very powerful early drop in this deck. 4/4 double strike swinging in on turn 3, and that's assuming I don't have any other equipment. Big bad cat. Initiate's Companion, it's a 3/1 cat, so he can swing in for 6 on turn 3 without any other equipment. And you get to untap a creature or land when it deals combat damage. So you usually untap him and keep him as a blocker if you need to. Sunsphere Shikari. As long as he's equipped, first strike and lifelink. This deck does gain a lot of life because you're not going to have a lot of cats in play at any given time. You're usually going to have anywhere from 1 to 3 cats, no more than that. Because this way, when the board gets swept, you lose fewer cats and you can play more afterwards. But because of that, you need the lifelink. Gain some life and be able to take your beats. Now, of course, this guy's got nothing to do with lifelink. It's got a lot to do with ramping. Oreskos Explorer. For each player that's got more lands than you, you can go dig up a plains. Why not? And it's also a 2/2 for 2, so swings in for 5 early in the game. Kasali Pride Mage. It's got Exalted, so if he swings out on his own with Arabho, so he's swinging in as a 6/6, and you can also sack him off to pop an enchantment or an artifact. Very, very versatile card, this Cat Wizard. Fleecemane Lion. I have seen a lot of other deck techs where they take this card out. I'm keeping him in. Not only is he a 3/3 on turn 2, but that Indestructible and the Monstrosity, a lot of players don't think he's worth it, but with the approach that my deck takes, I feel that it is. Keep him in there. Swing in for 6 damage on the early going. 7 once I get him Indestructible. And keep him around and just keep turning him sideways. Leonin Relic Warder. He comes in, he can exile an artifact or enchantment until he leaves the battlefield. And a fun fact, he's got separate triggers. So, in concept, in this deck I do not have a sacrifice engine, but in any decks that do, You'd be able to exile an enchantment or artifact permanently by playing him, choosing your target, and then sacrificing him before this first ability resolves. Much like Oblivion Ring. One of the many legendary cats in this deck, Miri, Weatherlight Duelist. Definitely kept her in there just because it makes it harder for opponents to counterattack you once you swing in with Miri. And she's got that first strike too, so toss your equipment on, give her the boost, turn her sideways. Makes it harder for opponents to block, and then makes it harder for opponents to crack back at you, because they can only attack with one creature at a time. I'm pretty sure you can deal with that. Kempa, Call Regent, another legendary cat. It generates more cat tokens for you, just by being equipped. This deck doesn't do much in the way of the swarm strategy, and in fact goes for big cats. But being able to generate some tokens to help block for you while you swing in with Kemba, well, why not? May as well do it. Alms Collector. You can flash him in, he's a 3/4, and if an opponent would draw more than one card, so 2 or more cards basically, they instead only draw 1 card, and then you would draw a card. So, any type of player has an effect that draws more than 1 card, such as tapping Arcanist the Omnipotent, or playing a Brainstorm. You drop him down, not only reduce that opponent's card draw, but you get more cards of your own. This is not so effective against decks that draw 1 card at a time, such as Niv Mizzet. If it says tap, draw 1 card, they'll still get that 1 card and you get nothing. But you flash him in against someone that plays Brainstorm, all of a sudden that Brainstorm player draws 1 card and then has to put 2 back on top of his deck. Did that in a game very recently, and it is not polite. Balin, the Wandering Knight, another legendary cat. He's got first strike. He's got double strike if he's got a whole bunch of equipment attached to him. And you can pay 2 mana to attach all your equipment to him. So a good mid-game cat if he comes up. Just all gold main. Again, this deck doesn't really go for the swarm thing, but having that mana sink where you can pump your cats plus X, where X is the number of attacking creatures you control. Even if you're only attacking with, say, 2 or 3 cats, that's still a significant boost. Not to mention the first strike. The 4/4 first strike is never a bad thing. Regal Caracal, because cat anthems, and because he spits out some tokens. So again, you would equip the Caracal, swing in, and then all of a sudden your boosted cat tokens can do all the blocking for you. Teamer, Sabretooth. He came in the Precon. I really like him. He's a 4/3, so not the best stats per se, but you can pay a green and 1. You can return a creature to your hand and make him indestructible, so you can actually keep a lot of your cats safe from board wipes with this effect. Huge fan. Cash Down Swordsmith, also from the Precon, but also originally from the Mirrodin set. He comes in, you can pay X to search your deck for an equipment, X or less, and put it onto the battlefield. You can tutor out some of your best equipment this way. So you don't necessarily play him on turn 4, you'll have to wait a little longer to make full use of him. Kasali Slingers, a 3/5 with reach, but when it or another cat comes onto the battlefield under your control, you get to destroy an artifact or enchantment. So you're essentially got ore shards in cat form. This is such a strong effect. Definitely a huge fan in this deck. Spirit of the Hearth. Now we're getting some bigger cats, in this case a flying cat spirit, because why not? And you have Hexproof, a good ability to have. He's there just because he's a big cat, but having Hexproof keeps you safe from, say, Mizzix decks that throw fireballs at your face. Jareth, Leonin Titan. When you can just drop some mana into it to give him protection from colors, he's going to get in on the attack every time. Not to mention the fact that he's going to block forever for you. If you have to stay on defense, nothing gets past Jareth, and Jareth gets past everything. He is awesome. Jedit, a 5/5 Forest Walk cat. Be careful not to let anyone steal this card from you, because you play a lot of forests in this deck, of course. But if you're playing against someone with forests, he'll never ever be blocked. And of course, don't forget he generates cats every time he turns sideways. You get a 2/2 cat token, giving you more blockers. I've kept Nahan, or Nazan in fact, here in the deck, because when you drop him, you get to search your deck for an equipment. If it's his particular equipment, the Hammer of Nazan, it comes directly into play. And spoiler alert, the Hammer of Nazan is in the deck. Of course, I can take any other equipment to my hand if I don't bring out the hammer. Speaking of the hammer, Phantom Nishoba. I remember playing against him back in the Onslaught days. He is a beast then, and he is a beast now. A 0/0, but he comes in with 7 +1/+1 counters, and every time he's damaged, he instead only loses a +1/+1 counter. So he gets a little smaller every time he takes damage, but he's not going to take a lot of damage. He's just going to trample over everything, and he also gains you life. Note the way the card is worded. When Phantom Nishoba deals damage, you gain that much life. You may think at first glance that is lifelink. It's not. Lifelink works slightly differently. So because of that, you can actually stack lifelink onto him and gain double the life. Rashka, the Golden Cub. Sorry about the camera knock. Again, another beastie card from the Meriden block. Obviously not a tournament card because of how expensive it was, but you know what? A 3/4 Vigilance. All your cats get +2/+2 double strike as long as Rashka is equipped. Very, very powerful effect. So even if you only have, again, the 2 cats or the 3 cats in play, they all become gigantic and monstrous. And it's not really a cat card per se, but I kept the White Sun Zenith in there because I guess there will be occasions where I need a whole bunch of 2/2s real quick. So that's what that's for. And of course it shuffles back into the deck, so really cool effect. And it's equipment time. And of course you have to go with some of the standard powerful equipment such as Skull Clamp, the +1/-1, and being able to draw cards when your creature dies. You're playing green and white, so you don't typically draw a lot of cards. Although I found some pretty good workarounds, as you'll see shortly. Got Bone Splitter. A very simple equipment, just a 2/0 equipment, but again, if you remember how cheap some of my early cats are, if I drop a 1/1 lifelinker on turn 1 and then equip a Bone Splitter on turn 2, swinging in for 6 on turn 2 and gaining me life. Bloodforged Battle Axe is a little bit slower. Gives the same power boost, but it costs 2 to equip. What's nice about this, of course, is that every time you hit a player, you get another copy of Bloodforged Battle Axe. And they just multiply and multiply and multiply. Swiftfoot Boots, classic Hexproof and Haste for 1 mana. And Lightning Greaves. Lightning Greaves with Shroud, so I'd rather play this on Arabho himself rather than any of the other cats in the deck, because if I use Lightning Greaves on the other cats in the deck, I cannot use his abilities on them. So it's a bit of a non-bow, but if I manage to get these onto him, it's pretty sweet. Sword of the Animist to pull out some basic lands. It also gives a +1/+1 boost, and it's cheap to play, cheap to equip. Hero's Blade is expensive to equip, but this deck does play a fair number of legendary creatures. So the Hero's Blade, it gives a +3/+2 bonus, and whenever a legendary creature comes in, I can automatically attach it to them free of charge. Sword of Vengeance, a little expensive at 3 and 3. 3 to play, 3 to equip. But the 2/0 boost, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. That's a lot of keywords. Why not? Sword of Fire and Ice. This one, of course, is one of the pricier cards in the deck. Of the 5 swords, this is the only one I'm actually playing in the deck because it's the only one that doesn't give protection from Arabho's colors. So I can equip the Sword of Fire and Ice and still give my cat that boost. Of course, it's also got the best ability for this deck, being able to draw cards and also deal a little bit of damage, which can snipe off some smaller tokens or utility creatures. Behemoth Sludge, 2/2, Trample, and Lifelink. And equips for 3. Loxodon Warhammer, 3/0, Trample, and Lifelink, and equips for 3. Again, because we're not having a lot of blockers, we want a lot of lifelinks, so these two equipments are perfect. The Heirloom Blade. Equipped creature gets 3/1, and whenever the equipped creature dies, you get to flip cards from your deck until you hit another creature of the same type. So when my cats dies, I flip cards till I find another cat, put in my hand. It's kind of like card draw in that sense. Again, being white and green, you don't usually get a lot of card draw, so that's very helpful. One of the big guns, of course, in this deck, Argentum Armor. It comes with Precon, but it gives a huge +6/+6 boost. And whenever the equipped creature attacks, destroy target permanent. Now, I'm not sure what's better between this particular ability and, say, Annihilator. Annihilator, like, if it's a small Annihilator, like 1 or 2 or 3, it may not be as good as this, because this time, with this, you can specifically get rid of something you don't like. So, I really like this equipment. Very, very powerful. And, as I've mentioned earlier, the Hammer of Nazan. Yes, I am playing it, because why wouldn't I? It gives equipped creature +2/0, and it gives them indestructible, so that's already really good to begin with. It's expensive to equip, but once you have the Hammer of Nazan in play, anytime you would put down some new equipment, it automatically attaches itself to a creature for free. So, you definitely want to play Hammer of Nazan in this style of deck. Alright, so what about my other supporting cards? I've got a whole bunch of other goodies in here. I'll start by how I generate card advantage with this deck, and that is with cards like Safe Ride Quest. I can pay a green or white to tutor out a forest or plains and put it in my hand, so it just pulls land out of my deck real quick. I have cards like Open the Armory to go get an aura or equipment. Spoiler alert, there are no auras. It's all about getting the good equipment. So whenever I'm ready to play my Sword of Fire and Ice or play my Loxodon Warhammer, I can go fetch it with this. Time of Need, as you've seen, we have a lot of legendary creatures. Time of Need is a pretty sweet tutor. It just lets me go get one of my legendary creatures. Map the Wastes. It's a way of pulling out a basic land from my deck into the battlefield, and don't ignore that bolster 1. You get your early drops down, you play Map the Waste, make that early drop a little bit more relevant. Of course, Cultivate comes with the deck, so why not play it? It is a commander staple for a reason, being able to pull out 2 basic lands, 1 in play, 1 into your hand. This is Pilgrimage, lets you pull a couple of forests, specifically forests, with this card, but if you have 2 or more sorceries already in your graveyard, instants and sorceries, then you can go for 3 forests instead. Pull a lot of your lands out of your deck. Traverse the Outlands is so good in this deck. Because all of a sudden you're playing this, you're pulling 4 or 5 lands out of your deck. Some people were debating if this was better than, say, Explosive Vegetation. In this deck, I feel that it is, because Explosive Vegetation, no matter when you play, you're only going to get your 2 lands. But with Traverse the Outlands, as long as you've got your creatures in play, you're getting 5 or 6 out. And then all of a sudden, all your draws for the rest of the game are that much better. And by that same logic, Soul's Majesty. It's the only card draw sorcery that I've kept in the deck. But again, you're playing this, you're drawing at least 6 cards, generally speaking. The nice thing about Arabho's ability is that you don't actually have to attack. You can declare your attack, not attack with your cat, if you feel that you can't really attack into anything safely, and then drop a Soul's Majesty and draw the cards. So, amazing, amazing card for this deck. I'm playing a little bit of Artifact Ramp, not too much actually, just Soul Ring, Hedron Archive, and Dreamstone Hedron. These are the only artifacts I'm playing that produce mana. But I'm also playing a lot of cheaper creatures, so I don't have to ramp up to 5, 6, 7 all the time. I'm playing a lot of creatures in the 1, 2, 3, 4 slot. So, it's a strategy that works for me. And of course, both of these artifacts can be sacked off for 2 to 3 cards each. So, Good to play them. I also tossed in a Lore Seeker's Stone. It's a good mid to late game option if I'm playing a lot of my cards, because my cards are cheap. So all of a sudden I'll have maybe 1 or 2 cards in my hand at most, and then if I have this in play, I can draw back up very quickly. My removal package, again, just some single target removal. I've got Condemn, which again comes with the deck. Pretty sneaky removal spell. Somebody attacks you, tuck that creature under the deck. Also Swords to Plowshares, because you can get any creature at any time with that. I kept Divine Reckoning in there because it's nice to be able to keep one of your big cats. Well, reducing everyone else down to, perhaps, yeah, everyone gets to keep their best creature. But in theory, your best creature is going to be better than everyone else's best creature. That's why you play this card. Of course, sometimes you just need to get rid of everything, so I added in a Wrath of God. Complements the route that comes with the deck. I do like route, and I like its potential as an instant. If you pay 7, you can play it as an instant. And it does happen where you can wait till everyone else is done. And then during somebody's end step, just route, and then you draw, and you're the first person to start building back your board. A little bit of targeted artifact removal with Dust to Dust. Takes 2 artifacts out for the low cost of 3 mana. Exiles them. Also have a Patrician Scorn. If someone's playing a lot of enchantments, and enchantments are becoming more and more popular, especially with Pelifort strategies. 1 Patrician Scorn will take care of all of those ghostly prisons that are holding you back. I chose Patrician Scorn as my removal because, although it costs 4 mana, I can cast it as an instant. And if I've played any other white spell, I can cast it for free. Very, very sneaky card. Keep this one in mind. I do play a few enchantments, not too many, so hopefully I don't have to like wipe my own enchantments, but the ones I do play are very strong. I do play Sigarda's Aid, of course, because of all the equipment. I can cast my equipment as though they had flash, and I can freely equip those to my creatures as soon as I play them. Very, very handy enchantment. Sylvan Library. The biggest benefactor of all the lifelink is Sylvan Library, because then instead of drawing 1 card, you draw 3 cards, and it says you put 2 of them back unless you pay 4 life per card. So keeping all 3 cards, you normally pay 8 life. But when you're gaining 6, 7, 8 life or more every turn, you attack, all of a sudden, it's 3 cards, draw 3 cards for free. Love this card in this deck. This deck came with Mirari's Wake and with Zendikar Resurgent. These are both great cards. Keep them in here if you've picked up this deck, because being able to double and triple your mana if you manage to get both. Get the Anthem effect off of Mirari's Wake, and of course get the card draw effect from Zendikar's Resurgent. These are both very powerful enchantments. But that's all the enchantments I play. In fact, that's all the non-land permanents I play. So now let's talk about the mana base. I'm playing 8 plains. 8 because of all of my cheap white creatures. I'm also playing 6 forests. I also have a command tower. And I've added in a brushland. I feel like the pain lands, where you can tap for a colorless or tap for a colored mana at the cost of 1 damage, is not played as much as one would think. These are great cards, especially in 2-color and 3-color decks. Just because they come in untapped, they're ready to go. You're going to take 1 or 2 damage, but once you have more basics out in play, then you're never going to take damage from this card again. So, good card to have, I find. The deck does come with both Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. I've kept both in here. We have Grasslands, also came with the deck. It's a search line. It comes into play tapped, but once it untaps, you get to search your library for a forest or plains and just put it directly onto the battlefield. And when you search for forest or plains, it comes in untapped unless you're getting one of those Yule lands that come in untapped. But you can actually get some pretty sweet lands with this card. You've got Myriad Landscape, of course. Comes with the deck. I also kept in the Corrosion Verge because it gets both a forest and a plains. I've kept the Blighted Woodland that came with the deck in there, again because it pulls 2 lands out. Putting 1 land in 2 is always a good thing. And I've kept the Selesnya Sanctuary out because it's just the perfect single land. It gives you both your colors. Mossford Bridge. It's got that hideaway, and once you have 10 power worth of creatures on the board, you get to play whatever card you hid away under there for free. So I kept that in there. I thought that was a very handy card to have. I also kept a lot of the 2-color lands that come into play tapped. I didn't keep all the possible ones I could have kept, but I did keep the Elfhame Palace and the Selesnya Guildgate and the Tranquil Grove. They don't provide any other benefit except for the perfect mana. I kept the Blossoming Sands, which gives you life when it comes down. And I kept the Sterling Wildwood, which also is actually a man land, so you can actually turn this into a creature whenever that need arises. And of course we have the Grey Pelt Refuge. This also gains you life when you play it. And the Path of Ancestry, because you're going to play at least 2, 3, 4 cats with it if you get it down early, so every scry counts, especially in these colors. I also kept the cycling lands, the Tranquil Thicket, and the Secluded Steppe, because you can just cycle them away real quick. Ideally, I don't want to play these. I definitely want to cycle them. I also kept Temple of the False God. It's pretty easy to get to 5 lands in this deck, so I kept the Temple of the False God in there to help pay for equip costs. And Rogue's Passage, of course, because unblockable big cats. I don't have to explain that one further. And that is my take on Arabho, Roar of the World. Alright, so that was my take on Arabho, Roar of the Wild. A non-traditional Voltron deck, if you will. I call it a non-traditional Voltron deck because we play a lot of equipment, but instead of throwing all that equipment on our commander and looking for that 21 commander damage, we instead throw it all onto the other creatures in our deck, and we're looking to bring everybody from 40 to 0. It's a lot more work, but with the life gain that we have in the deck, it's definitely doable. It's definitely a very fun approach to take. And of course, the merits of the strategy are pretty simple. We have 1, maybe 2 creatures out that we're sitting sideways with. Somebody wipes the board. That's one, maybe 2 cards that we lose. We've got a whole bunch more in our hand, ready to go. So, that was my take on Arabho. What was your take on this commander or any of the other legends in this deck? Let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you later. See you next time.